Shalom and welcome to Jerusalem Studio. During the June campaign of 2025, when Israel struck Iran in Operation Rising Lion, and the U.S. added their aerial bombardment of Iran's nuclear facilities in Operation Midnight Hammer, all parties concerned saw fit to end the campaign after 12 days. This time, however, the declared war goals of the U.S.-Israeli alliance are more ambitious, and the Iranians, who have lost their supreme decision-maker, are likely less able to negotiate any agreement on accepting terms for conflict termination. So what is the outlook for the next phase in this war? Joining us to dissect this question include all the way from Washington, D.C., retired Brigadier General Mark Kimmitt, formerly a U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for Political Military Affairs, as well as a senior officer at U.S. Central Command. It's good to have you with us, General.
Hi, Jonathan.
Also joining us is Brigadier General in Reserve Dr. Amnon Sofrin, formerly the Chief of the Intelligence Directorate at Mossad, as well as a senior officer at the IDF Intelligence Directorate. It's great to have you with us, sir.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
And last but not least, our TV7 editor-at-large, Mr. Amir Oren. Amir, the complexities of this war are unending, and yet, with much optimism, we're looking towards phase 2 of this war.
The complexities are unending, but every war must end, which is the title of a book written by Freddie Clay, a former Pentagon official. And here we are, approximately 4.5, almost 5 days after the war started. And this time of the year, 35 years ago, was when the 100-hour war ended between the United States and the Alliance and Iraq, which was a deliberate decision by President Bush at the recommendation of Joint Chiefs Chairman Colin Powell that enough is enough. And then started the 12 years of Southern Watch, Northern Watch, and the next war. So the question is, can this war be brought to an end? And even if it is not the last war ever in the region, at least that the outcome would be fulfilling enough for us meaning Israel, the United States, perhaps some of the Gulf countries, so that no additional conflict will be needed down the road.
Specifically with this in regard to the Islamic Republic of Iran, naturally. But let's start with you, General Kimmitt. Obviously, we are at phase 1, soon to enter into phase 2. Speaking about the phase 2 within the context also of escalation dominance, where do you see this heading?
Well, there certainly is a lot of noise that is running throughout the media, the diplomatic circles, so on and so forth, and the political. I'm trying to keep this straight in my own mind. To me, the war termination goals are the same as the negotiating termination goals were as we negotiated with Iran. That is, end the ballistic missile program, end the nuclear program, end the connection with proxies, those 3 goals. And candidly, I think that since the Iranians were unwilling to negotiate on a couple of those points and agreed to the last point of their nuclear program, we decided to walk off the negotiating table and hop in the planes. And now we're trying to compel the Iranians to accept those policies of both the United States and I suspect Israel. So when this war, in my mind, will go on until the knees of the Iranians buckle and they say, let's go back to the negotiating table. And I've written on this, and my view is, we'll go back to the negotiating table. But before we do, you have to concede those points, 1, 2, and 3, so we can then talk about other issues and other negotiating points, sanctions relief, economic assistance, help with the water crisis. That's an existential threat to Tehran. But they had a chance to negotiate on the key concerns of the United States and its allies, nukes, ballistic missiles, proxies. They were unwilling to do that at the table, so now we're going to do it on the battlefield.
Thank you, General Kimmitt. General Sofrin, I am less optimistic about the diplomatic track ensuing vis-a-vis the Ayatollah regime in Tehran, with potentially a comprehensive collapse of this terror regime anticipated. Who will take the reins of power next is another question mark. But nonetheless, when looking at the transition from phase 1 to phase 2, what do you see?
I think that phase 1 was aimed to, first of all, to destroy what can be destroyed, infrastructure of ballistic missiles and production sites, as well as storage. On the other hand, to make sure that the nuclear facilities are totally destroyed. And in addition, the first attack or the first strike on the first day of the war that killed the Supreme Leader Khamenei and his assistants and another what we call seniors within the administration of the Iranians, meaning from the RGC and from the armed forces and so on. Now, the next phase is, as I believe, is trying to make the Iranians understand that they have to change the way, either or to exchange some of the leadership, meaning to find someone that is more moderate and will be willing to negotiate with the United States and to accept all the terms that General Kimmitt just mentioned. Or on another issue, it can be also that they're trying to topple this regime and to exchange it with some more democratic or as if democratic regime, even though within Iran today to find somebody who is more democratic, it's very hard to tell, but you can find more moderate people, which you call light extreme people, like the former President Rouhani and other people like that. But I believe that this is the aim right now, to try to topple this regime and to exchange the mood and to exchange its atmosphere and to be able to negotiate with Iran, which is down on its knees and waving the white flag and saying, okay, we are willing to give all the concessions you ask us from us.
Mr. Oren, there is skepticism among certain circles with regard to whether or not there's going to be a regime change at some point. It seems like the U.S. military, on the one hand, is alongside the Israeli military operating to degrade Iran's capabilities from projecting powers beyond its borders. It is seeking to degrade any type of besiege or internal security type of infrastructure that could establish assembly lines, so to speak, for a future crackdown. And all the while, we are hearing already about reports of special operators conducting various raids in order to facilitate certain aspects that are unknown to the general public that could lead to certain less of a public warfare, but rather low signature type of operation to try and bring about the circumstances that would accommodate a potential regime change. One of those instances that is quite interesting is the weakening of the Iraq-Iran border, seeing multiple activities to degrade the capabilities there. And this is just one circumstance of many, potentially utilizing, the Kurdish minorities. Some speak about them, others speak about the Azeri minority, others in Baluchistan to see the Baluchis rise up. But there are multiple areas where the Iranian regime may lose control sooner or later, and if one city falls, it could catch fire.
So these are changes of the second order. Perhaps Iran would be fragmented into districts or provinces according to religious or tribal affiliation. This is a possibility, but you remember the Secretary of Defense of the Afghan and Iraqi wars, Donald Rumsfeld, who talked about known unknowns. And one unknown here, even though it is talked about, is the Iranian population. And President Trump has been very careful in not promising to replace the population with Americans on a nation-building mission, setting up the alternative regime. The United States and Israel can do a lot to topple the current regime, but they cannot really set up another regime and sustain it, because we could enter into a period of coups and counter coups and revolutions and rebellions and who knows. So it is up to the Iranians to get out of their homes and try to do something. We can't do their work for them, at least not all of it.
Well, let's humor this thought for a moment. Naturally, we do know, and this to you, General Sofrin, actually, if I may, we do know that the opposition has now formed some sort of government abroad of multiple factions that used to oppose each other and now are working in, I wouldn't say harmony, but synergy towards the same goal. Could we see them in collaboration with local groups finding common ground and trying to form something that may function as an alternative government?
It can be done only on one condition. If the people of Iran that are affiliated with this government that you spoke about, if they will have enough power, meaning military power, that means that part of the armed forces will desert and join them. And so they will have weapon systems and they can do a lot with weapon systems. Right now, they have only, let's say, at the most, rifles, and that's it. It's not enough. As long as the IRGC and the Basij are supporting the current regime and they're opposing each one of these attempts to try to topple the regime from the inside, and they will brutally try to deny it, then the alternative cannot be based only on people from abroad, from the outside. Joining together with clans or with minorities inside Iran, it's not enough, because you need to have what we call a military power, which is strong enough to help you carry out this mission.
Thank you, General Sofrin. General Kimmitt, you also served in the Pentagon, obviously, or rather obviously, but you served in the Pentagon as an Assistant Secretary of Defense for the Middle East, if I'm not mistaken, during the course of which you focused much on the complexities that had to do also with the subsequent period to the Iraq War. Now, there were plenty of challenges there, but nonetheless, if you really look at the complexities today, they're not very similar in many aspects, but nonetheless, there are plenty of opportunities to operate both from a DOW or DOD at the time perspective, and also from a central intelligence type of perspective, in close collaboration also with Israel's various intelligence apparatus and other forms of strong power that could then, again, facilitate that defensive ring to frustrate the Basij and other type of internal security apparatus from cracking down on the local population seeking to liberate themselves. Is that viable in your perspective?
Let me take the other view. I agree with General Sofrin on everything he said so far. And General Sofrin and I both have history on our side. We're talking about Hungary in 1956. We're talking about Prague in 1968. We're talking about the Shia uprising in Iraq in 1991. Unless the security structures fracture and come over to the side of the protesters, I candidly think the Iranian Basij and the IRGC will simply lubricate their tracks with the bodies of the protesters.
So let me follow up on that, since President Donald Trump has spoken about thousands of Iranian forces who are reaching out to the United States in order to highlight their keen interest of shifting sides, so to speak. He did not elaborate for good reason, but nonetheless, um, given that there are also more and more circulating images of videos of various uh, Iranian troops, be they RGC or military, that are stating openly without showing their faces, of course, but stating openly that they're very keen on supporting the Iranian people against the regime. Is that a good sign? And what are we to expect in this context?
Well, look, let's talk about the end state. I don't think anybody on this show would be upset if we saw a new government inside of Iran that is westward leading, a friend to their neighbors, respect human rights, and use the election box as the manner to choose their leaders. But you have enough people cheerleading that prospect. I'm taking a more pessimistic view, and I think General Sofrin would agree with me that it is unlikely at this point that the security services will crack. Iran has brought back Ahmed Wahidi, who started the Iranian Revolutionary Guard's Quds Force in 1988. We see Ari Larijani, the ultimate hardliner, back. They're probably bringing up Raisi from the dead, the butcher of Tehran. Everything at this point would appear that the hardliners are worried about what you're suggesting and are trying to maintain control of the government and will use enormously brutal force to do it. Now, as the old saying goes about bankruptcy, it happens slowly until it happens instantly. And it could be with the security forces. We should hope for that. History doesn't and isn't on the side of that hope, but let's hope that history changes in this case.
But you know, there are ambitious people. Maybe there is some general or even a lower ranking officer hiding in the wings, waiting for all the veteran generals or the revolutionaries of 1979 to pass from the scene one way or the other, and then try to take control of the government, not because he's a Zionist or pro-Western or MAGA, but out of sheer ambition to rule Iran. And at that point, the question would become, is there going to be a simmering rebellion which will force the new rulers of Tehran to focus their attention inward rather than launch missiles against Israel and other neighbors? If they have to take all of their energy and channel it inward, that would be a good outcome too. Not the best, but a good one.
Well, good is relative, naturally, but nonetheless, General Sofrin, I'd like to ask you, looking at the again, I know we need to discuss the pessimistic angle and the likelihood of greener pastures is usually not one for the prudent, but nonetheless, what is a good scenario that is viable in this context, considering the fact that we are seeing, General Kimmitt mentioned Larijani and other top hardline commanders that have fomented a lot of pain to the Iranian people, and not just the Iranian people, also beyond Iran to many communities throughout the region, including Israel. The decapitation of many of those individuals of the last days has been staggering. Just before we recorded today's show, 88 experts of the council of experts that was supposed to choose the next supreme leader of the Ayatollah regime have been completely wiped out. Of course, we have to wait for a BDA or a battle damage assessment, but nonetheless, they were convening for that purpose and they were eliminated. And in this context, I mean, the number of senior leadership that are being decapitated is staggering. And taking Lebanon as a case, specifically the Iranian proxy Hezbollah, I know this is not necessarily a good equivalent, but nonetheless, everybody was speaking, and that was the consensus, that if you eliminate Hassan Nasrallah, a worse figure may come and take his place. And that was the case with the predecessor of Hezbollah when he was eliminated, the predecessor of Nasrallah. Nasrallah came about. So now when we have Naim Qassem there, even though he has no kind heart or good intentions to anything to do with Israel or the West, nonetheless, everybody is comfortable with him because he is a dummy in disguise.
I think that you cannot compare what happened in Hezbollah and Naim Qassem to what happens in Iran. Because in Iran, let's say most of the seniors are very radical and are having or sharing the same ideology and the same concept and the same aims. And nobody wants to see Iran coming back to the days of the Shah, prior to 1979. And that means that as long as these people are in power and they have a lot of influence and they can choose or elect who is going to be the next supreme leader, even though Israel can decapitate each one who is going to be elected, just like the attack of today on the assembly of experts who were due to elect the new supreme leader. And we followed what happened with the leaders of Hezbollah until Naim Qassem was appointed to be the Secretary General of Hezbollah. But nevertheless, Iran is another story because you have a lot of people and a lot of interest. The RGC have a lot of interest, not only to stay in power, but they have a lot of economical interest, and they won't give it up. So the fact is that nobody will be willing to willingly give up their power to somebody else who is really more moderate and will surrender to the West and then cause damage to their own interest, and they will fight for that. So we'll have to wait and see. Even though somebody is going to be decapitated, somebody else will come in power and will be elected, and a lot of them, and the choices are not only one person or two persons only.
Well, I'd like to be more optimistic again. General Kimmitt,
Yeah,
give
listen,
us another line.
Well, before I leave, I'd simply say the Maduro example is not a bad one. Pulling him out, Darcy Rodriguez is no friend of ours. She's railing against us every day, but she's pliable. Look what we're doing with Ahmed al-Shara. I know you agree with it, but he seems to be generally pliable. Same thing happened to Panama when we pulled Manuel Noriega out. Maybe we leave an administration in that doesn't necessarily love us, but is moderate enough to work with us if we don't put too many conditions on them. You know, Franklin Roosevelt once said about Somoza, he's a son of a, but he's our son of a. And I think that's the best we can hope for, is that we get a son of a in there, but he can work with us. And if he can't, well, you've already demonstrated that we can find somebody else, as you did with Hezbollah. You just keep going through the leadership until you find a Naim Qassem and hope for the best.
Indeed. Well, we are drawing near to the end of the program, so we'll have a closing statement from each of you today. General Sofrin, we'll start with you.
We'll have to wait and see what happens next after we know the BDA of this attack on the assembly of experts, and to see who is left alive and what kind of power do they have, and do they have the ability to elect the new supreme leader, and who is going to be this person, and what his ideology should be. And this is what they call a step ahead to see what comes next.
General Kimmitt?
I think it was unwise to go against the assembly of experts. I think the most important thing is to get a new supreme leader in there, Let's find out his attitude. If he's not on our side, if he's not then we give him another chance to pick another supreme leader, and we keep going down the target deck until Naim Qassem has become the supreme leader.
Well, the stated objective by both President Trump and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu happens to be regime change. Now, they still don't have all the assets in theater, but we hear from Secretary of State and National Security Advisor Marco Rubio, as well as Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, that they're unwilling to say that they're not going to use all the tools at the disposal of the president to bring about such a change. Now, Mr. Oren, when we're looking at the chances with the current tools at play to something like this happening, I happen to agree with General Kimmitt and General Sofrin. It's unlikely, to say it mildly, but nonetheless, precedent is place. There is place for precedent, and there have been plenty of precedents taking place over the course of the past 2 years on multiple aspects. Closing statement from you?
What the three of you are saying is that if the only thing between a new regime in Iran and the reality is the IRGC's elimination, some military force, be it Israeli, American, or another, would come in and fight to the death with the IRGC. Is it likely in the next few months? Not really.
Well, that's all the time that we have for today. I'd like to thank General Kimmitt and General Sofrin for all of your insights today. I'd like also to thank Mr. Amir Oren.
Thank you.
And to thank you at home. And until our next edition from here in Jerusalem, Shalom. TV7 Israel invites you to watch and hear some of the most knowledgeable experts, most of whom partook in creating policies shaping this region today. Join us for Jerusalem Studio. For more of TV7's productions and editorials, we invite you to visit our website at www.tv7israelnews.com.